Okay, the first speaker, Professor Dr. Gurdial, those of us who are long enough in the profession would be no stranger to him. He was a leading practitioner in two leading cases, Bakun Dam and AIE cases, and see how we're going to address a very important issue tonight. Okay, with that, I will call upon the first speaker, Professor Dr. Gurdial.
Thank you for inviting me. First, I want to pay tribute to the Bar Council. First, very importantly, for renaming this auditorium as the Raja's auditorium. It's very fitting that we are holding functions like this, talks like this in this auditorium, named after him, because he was a very valiant fighter, he was a very courageous fighter, and right until the end, he stayed his course. So, in his memory, at least, we should emulate his example, all of us lawyers. And I also like the fact that you say we make it two ways, so that we keep it brief, so that we can have an interaction and reach some kind of an understanding as to where we are all coming from, and more importantly, where we are going. Now, I just want to make 4 short points. First is, I was involved in the ARE case together with a couple of other lawyers, and I am extremely surprised by the uncanny parallel between what is happening, what happened then, and what happened now. What is happening to Lynas? Because all the kind of excuses that were given, right, by the government, by industry, are exactly the same. That it is safe, there is no problem with this, you know, you all are exaggerating, NGOs are alarmist, that we are different. When we quoted anything else, when people quoted anything else, no, we are different because that was extremely, you know, regardless, they disregarded the basic safety requirements, but it's different for us. And the government said, Datan Tun Mahathir, who now thankfully opposes this, at least he has articulated some opposition to dumping the waste in our backyard. He said, you know, we'll never ever get to become nuclear if all these NGOs and all these other activist lawyers, you know, stop this project. And you get radiation from everywhere. You sit in front of a TV also, you get radiation, so what's the big deal? All right, so government had that kind of a refrain. So it was exactly the same that we hear now. So that's the first point, that we have to reject the kind of things, because what then came out in court, which I'll talk to you very briefly about, was to expose all this as incredible fallacies that were public relations exercises. Right? They pay a lot of money for public relations. The second point I want to make is, we are dealing with a very rich corporation with lots of money. Lots and lots of money. In the ARE case, it was Mitsubishi, you know, it was an arm of Mitsubishi. They're such a powerful multinational. Here, we are talking about billions of dollars. They can buy everything and anything, right? Already, they have subverted democracy, because very simply, before you locate a project like this, in a situation like this, you have to get public consultation. There has to be public, this is called a democracy. It's very elementary. But money can buy everything, money can buy all kinds of distortions and variations so this was a done deal even before people became aware and were alerted and got their action going. It was already action in motion. And as far as the government was concerned, it was just ex post facto rationalization after that. You know, they got everybody on board to justify it. So it's exactly the same, right? And so we have to recognize that here we are dealing with big bucks. Right? We're dealing with people who have a lot of influence, a lot of power. They are able to seduce many in the movement itself into arriving at a different conclusion from what we all started with. So that's the second point to make. And the third one, of course, is the question of public consultation. This is very critical, because the people who will pay the price are never consulted, and they are the ones who are going to be affected. Right? We see Fukushima, for example. I mean, the people in Fukushima were never consulted. And yet the people who are paying the price today, it's not the corporations, it's not all the other people, but it is the people who were not consulted, who are the recipients of the incredible pollution that has cast their whole life into this area. So this is the third point I want to make. And the final point I want to make is we have to formulate, of course, there's a lot of protest. Now, I speak from the standpoint of a lawyer who at one time was an activist lawyer. Now, what we have to reassert is we have to formulate something that goes beyond protest. Right? This is a battle for the reassertion of real democracy, of a functioning democracy. Now, this is the issue that is at stake in this particular episode, in this particular incident. Now, the thing is, how do we then reformulate? What shall we do? What should be done? I think it's useful to learn from experiences of the past. And if you look at ARE, at the end of the day, the plant was closed. And this was a multi-pronged approach that was taken by a large number of people, from which maybe we can get some inspiration. Okay, first is, there was a big movement of the people, and I'm happy to see our Save Malaysia group here, who have been carrying out an extremely valiant effort in trying to deal with this problem at the grassroots level itself, at the level of people who are going to be directly impacted. All right, so, and I can see the reimagination of ideas that are being put forward by these protest groups, the various ways in which they are dealing with the powers that be who want to push on with this project, regardless of what may, come what may. So that is one level that is exactly as happened in ARE in those days in the 80s, 1980s, 87 and so on. There also there was a big movement of the people itself. They're very steadfast, they stood their ground, they were arrested under the ISA. Even when they went to court, they walked to court, marched to court, they were arrested for walking to court because they said this is an illegal assembly. Even though they spaced themselves out, they walked about 20 kilometers or something every day to go to the court. And even though they spaced themselves out and were 10 feet or 15 feet away from each other, so there was no assembly-like, procession-like appearance. But just the fact of you wearing a shirt, a t-shirt which says PARK at that time, the People's Action Committee Against Radiation, you were arrested. So they withstood all that. So these are the kind of things that you've got to anticipate that could happen, but you have to be resolute in the face of that because it affects your life, you see. It's a very fundamental thing that's going to affect your life. All right, then of course I think, and this is I think Kai Ping is probably going to talk about this, it's also very important as part of this awareness, I think. You must expect to lose, but as part of this awareness, to initiate a public interest litigation, because it's an incredible mobilizing activity, because then people have to come to court, then they have to be cross-examined, then you can present your version of the argument, and the press picks it up as a report it's become the news item. So you don't have to have press conference, because every day to be reporting, the pros, the cons, and it gets into the public consciousness at a very heightened level. But of course you must be prepared to lose, and you must be prepared to put in huge hours, because these are very difficult cases. Now, talking as a lawyer then, all right, since this is a bar council event, what are the bases upon which you can hinge your actions, right? Now, that is a very fundamental principle in international law, and our government is a party to many of these conventions. It has become rooted in international environment law. It is known as the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle is very simple. It says that you don't wait to have all the complete evidence, scientific or otherwise, before government decides to take action, right? The precautionary principle very simply says that if there is scientific uncertainty, right? In other words, you look at the science as is happening now, right? You look at Lynas science, they say, oh, it's absolutely safe. And yet there are lots of experts on the side of the people who say, no, this can pose very serious dangers in the long run, which are going to have very deleterious and long-term effects upon the people. So what does the government do? The precautionary principle comes in. It says that where you consider the signs of both sides and there is uncertainty, then you have to take the precautionary approach, which is you must not allow an activity to go on. Now, this is a fundamental principle. And this principle is accepted by our governments because they are parties. I'm involved in a lot of international treaty negotiations, and it is fundamental. This is, you know, it's a very plain and simple and accepted concept. So this is it. If there is a doubt, it's like a criminal case. If there is a doubt, then how do you resolve the doubt? You resolve the doubt in favor of the people. You don't resolve a doubt in favor of the person who's going to pollute, because the consequences are very disastrous. Huh? So you have this fundamental leverage upon which these court cases can be founded.